Welcome to the fastest stuff in town. Today on Masechtas Megillah Daf Chav Daled, we are going to begin on the bottom of Chav Gimel Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Hakari b'Torah. Whenever we have the Torah reading, yivchais mishlosh psukim, you have to at least read 3. V'lo yikrel maturgman yosim pasuk echad. However, the maturgman should not read more than one pasuk, or shouldn't translate one pasuk. Rashi says, because otherwise there could be mistakes that will end up happening if you do it otherwise. However, as we continue to Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, Uben Navi Shlosha, says Rashi, Im Yirtzef, the Maturgman wants, though if Chaslan, we're not as concerned, Im Yitef, you make a mistake, Do Nafgiminei Hoira, so no terrible thing can come out from it, and therefore we're more lenient when it comes to the Navi. And Tosa says, V'achshav, Ein Anu Amikarin Maturgman, we don't do this. Afil b'navi el pasuk echad shel yavolita rak b'tchilas hahaftorah anu makrin gimel maturgmal hodia kikein hadin imuloy dechashin and shiyita. So just in order to remember this halacha, the beginning we allow the maturgman to do a 3 psukim, but otherwise we just do one at a time. Okay, back in the Mishnah. Hayu shloshtan shlosh parshios. Let's say 3 of them. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what this means, how you can find this consecutive. 3 parshios are 3. So Karan echad, and there you read each one. Fine, we'll understand what that means when we get to the Gemara. Medalgin b'navi in medalgin b'tayra. When we go through the psukim, we don't just skip sections. You have to read straight through. But navi, we're not as particular. Ad kama hu medalig. How much could one skip when it comes to the navi? Ad kadei shul yifsak maturgman. Enough that the maturgman doesn't end up stopping, and because of that, there'll end up being long delays, which is tircha de tzibura. Okay, again, we'll have to understand this more when we get to the Gemara. So hani gimel psukim keneged mi. Why do we have this minimum of 3 psukim? Where does that come from? Some ravasi keneged tarnavim miksubim. So it's Keneged Tanakh, Torah Nevi'im Miksuvim. That's what we had before. V'lo yikro maturgman yosim pasuk echad, not more than 1 pasuk by the maturgman, or when it comes to the Navi, gimel psukim. V'im hayu shloshtan sholosh parshios kari echad echad. What does that mean? Kigon ki koyimar Hashem chinam nimchartem, which is a pasuk in Yeshai, you can say in Navi. And then it says, Ki koimar Hashem Elokim Mitzrayim Yored Ami Berishayna. And then V'ata Mali Po Ne'um Hashem. So this is where we have 3 consecutive psukim, one right after the other. Okay, weiter. Medalgim and Navi v'in medalgim b'Torah. So Raminhu Kairi Achrimos. We find when it comes to Yom Kippur that they read Achremos, and then afterwards they read Ach Be'asar. Now, even though it's true, you can see they're both from Sefer Vayikra, however, it's not in the exact same place. So Medali. So Rabbi Lukasha, Kan B'chdei Shiyivsak HaMaturgman, Kan B'chdei Shlo Yivsak HaMaturgman. So when it comes to the Torah, you could be Medalig, provided that the Maturgaman will not have any delay. Ivahola Katani, what do you mean? But we learned that only that distinction when it comes to Navi, not by Torah. But Navi, it says Medal B'Torah, Navi and Medal B'Torah. V'yad kama Medal Gad Kadeshul Yivsak HaMaturgaman. M'chlal, we could deduce the B'Tor Klal Kalo. You can never be Medali. El Omer Bai Lukasha, Kan B'inyan Echad, Kan B'Shtei Inyanais. It depends if it's in Echad or Shtei Inyanais. So let's look at Rashi. Sheshnehen Medabrim B'Davar Echad. If you have, for example, in Yom Kippur, it's the same theme, Ve'en Kan Tiru of Hadas. Therefore, even though you are Medalig, but because it's the same concept, no one's going to lose track. Hilkach Kilo Mafsik Turgaman, provided that the Turgaman isn't Mafsik, Medal, you could skip even my Torah. Shahar Shneim B'inyan Yom Kippur and Medabrim, because both of them talk about Yom Kippur. Masnising Tani Klal Lo B'Shnei Yanim Kigon Parshas Negoyim LeParshas Zavin. Things which really have very little or nothing to do with one another. That's where you are not allowed to be medalig. Now, this is mashma again. Kadei shivsuk maturgaman. We also, by the way, see this when it comes to the Taina Sibor. When we read Vayachal, we don't go straight through, but what ends up happening is the Aliyah ends, and therefore there's no break really, because the next person gets called to the Torah, even though we go to like the next column, depending how the Torah is written, but it's not right away, the second Aliyah, but that's also not an issue. Vasanya, we need Rashi for this, but Chusa, this is a proof. Medalga Matara be'inyan echad v'navi b'shtein yanin. Kan v'kan b'chdei shel yifseka maturgaman. However, when it comes to the Navi, even when it comes to Navi, it has to be enough that the Maturgam is not mafsek. Tanya idach, in Medalgam Navi l'Navi, you can't skip from one sefer of Nach to another. But Navi shel shnei maser medalig. However, it comes to shnei maser, that is allowed. V'vad shel yedalig m'soifa sefer l'tchilaso. You can't go from all the way to the back to the beginning, as Rashi says, l'mafreya. Okay, let's look at question 2. So we said if it's inyan echad and kadei shel yifsek hamaturgum. Next Mishnah, hamaftir benavi. So a person who says and gets maftir, says Rashi misha rogil lahaftir benavi. Someone who's accustomed to getting this aliyah, titu chachamim sheiparis shema. We also give them another kibud. Who poris al shema? It says over here. It says Rashi says es shema. Here it says the Mishnah says al shema. Okay, so we give him another kibud. V'hu oivel ifnei ateva v'hu noises kapov. So he could end up being moitzi the sibor by getting davening, by saying kedusha, or possibly doing the siyas kapayim if he was a kohen. V'im hayakatan avivu rabo oiver al yodo. Even though it's a child, so a child can't be moitzi the rabbin, but a katan could get maftir, so therefore we give this kibud to his teacher, to his father. Katan kari b'Torah u'matargim. Now, even a child, it says, is allowed to read the Torah, technically, and to do the targum. Aval enu paras al shema, but he's not allowed to be paras shema. Rashi says, Lafi shu ba l'haitzi rabbi midei chovasan. This is a general concept, so he's trying to be moitzi other people, and therefore that's why he's not allowed to do it. Now it's interesting. Apparently, the chiyuv of kriyas Torah is therefore not necessarily the same din as being moitzi yedei acher midei chovasan, because otherwise we wouldn't allow katan to be kar b'Torah. Okay. Again, he can't lead the minyan. He can't do nesiyas kapayim. Rashi says, "Im koyin hu she'ein kavod shel sibor liyos kafufin lebir chaso." So, again, the question is he the only one? That's what it's talking about, or bechlal? Fine. Next, the Mishnah says, "Poicheach." Someone who's a poicheach. Rashi says, Kol shikrav nirin orim v'yachiv. If, let's say, their ankles are naked because he's barefoot, he could be paris es shema. This is very fascinating. The Mishnah here says paris es shema. The Mishnah before said paris al shema. Okay. Umatargim. Obviously, there's probably a diuk of dikduk that perhaps I'm not familiar with. Paris es shema umatargim. Aval enu kaira b'Torah ve'enu oiver lifnei ateva ve'enu noises kappa. We don't allow him to do any of these things. It's just he can't be noises kappa, even though that's what kohanim don't wear shoes. For some reason, you cannot be noises kappa. Suma, someone who's blind, paris es shema. Umatargim, because a summa is mechuyev in mitzvahs. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kol shul ra moiris miyoma ve'ena paris al shema. Such a person is not allowed to be paris al shema. Fine. Look at Rashi. Al ve'enu kar b'Torah mishum kavod Torah v'chein lifnei atev v'chein b'nesius kapayim genaihu tzibor. It's a disgrace. Look in Tosfos. What is a poicheach? Tosfos says v'chein pirish rav ilfas depachi. Zehu oiso shalwobash begadim kruyim. This is specifically Talmud who was wearing ripped clothing, which perhaps is a little bit more understandable about the issue of Nesias Kapayim, where if he's just not wearing shoes, that's what was done. So interesting toisus. Furthermore, the next toisus, the bottom one I should say, it says there's a shita in Baba Kama that assumes part to be called mitzvahs. Skipping another line, v'hadam aftirin hasam suma hainu min Torah. That which we say he could do this is min Torah. Of a rabbanan miyachayev, or the notion of perhaps not allowing a suma. However, midrabanan miyachayev. Midrabanan assumes mechuyev yafil nistamish mishnayilad, even if he was blind from birth. Mikol makam chayev hu midrabanan shlihi kinachri v'loyehe noyig bo das Yehudi klal. We're not going to allow someone just because they're blind, even if maybe Me'ikar Hadin, they're not Mechuyev in mitzvos, to say they don't do mitzvahs, then they're like a Nachri. And that we're not going to do. The Rabbanan instinctively understood the significance that making sure that just because a person is blind, they should still do the mitzvos. And they're not a Nachri. They're like a Yid. They're still Jewish. And therefore they should perform the mitzvos. Very fascinating Taisus Ein Sham. Let's continue in the Gemara. So my taima. So what is the reason of all this? Why the person who gets navi, he gets other kibudim, if they did the haftarah. So Rapapoy mishum kavod, because of respect. Says Rashi, we give him this kibud. For whatever reason, the maftir wasn't considered to be such a kavod, maybe because katanim, kids could get these aliyahs. So therefore, because it wasn't such a distinguished honor, so therefore we want to almost make it up for you and give you this honor. Rabba barshimi yomer mishum de'asi linsuye. People end up talking. What does that mean? Hadavar bali de machlokes actually can cause fighting and quarreling. Ani maftir v'ata tablif ne'ateva. Why are you getting this great kibbutz? Fighting in shul, unfortunately, never ended or never started, whatever. So my binayu. What's the difference between these two opinions? If everything in the shul was for free, no one was compensated for any jobs. Habol lav says Rashi, eno naito schar. Someone who gets called up and davens for the tzibur doesn't get compensated. So let's look at this Rashi as it spills on Talmud Beis. Dahacha in suye leika. There's not going to be any quarreling. Mishum kavod ika. There's still an issue of kavod. No one's going to quarrel and say, "Oh, how come you're getting the job that gets paid $40 if no one's getting paid anything for it anyway?" Okay, fine. So the Ovid Bechinam Tanan, back in the Amud Aleph. V'im hayakatan Ovid v'Rabbi Oibern al Yado. If the katan gets the mafter, so his father or his teacher gets it. Now, Iyamar Misham Nitsuye Katan Bar Nitsuye who? If it's because of quarreling, how's a child going to be engaged in this? He's not allowed to get any of these kibudim anyway. He should be happy he got this. Elamai Mishum Kavod Katan Bar Kavod who? What's the honor? What do you mean? He's a child isn't thinking about kavod. He's thinking about having some candy. It's adults that worry about their honor. El Ika Kavod Aviv Kavod Rabbi. There is an element of kavod for the father and kavod for the teacher. As we continue to Talmud Beis, Hachanami Ika Nitsui Aviv Nitsui Rabo. So that could also apply as well. Poicheach Paris al Shema. Bamine Ula Barav Miabaye. Katan Poicheach Mahu Shikru Batayra. What's the din if there's a child? Is he allowed to do it? Says Rashi, Gadol Poicheach Hu Da'aser Mishum V'lo Yira B'cha Ervas Davar. Because there's an issue of erva. Again, he's not completely naked, but he's part of his body that should be covered as exposed. Avul katan enu musar. We're not as careful with kids with regard to that. Well, dimalo plig mastis bin katan gadol. Sarmulei. So on this, the Gemara answers v'ti boilach orum. Why don't you ask the question if he's completely orum? He's completely naked. Orum my time alo mishum kavod sibur. So achana mishum kavod sibur. So the whole issue is because of kavod sibor, and therefore perhaps it's a lack of kavod sibor having a poicheach katan. Okay, suma, when it comes to someone who's blind, paris al shema. Tanya Amrul Rabbi Huda was said to Rabbi Huda, Harbeit Safli Lidraish B'Markava V'lo Ra'oisam Yamehem. What does that mean? There are so many people that learn Sefer Yecheskel and learn Masa Markava, which is the most difficult and complex topics, and they were never able to see. So how could he say that blind people shouldn't do mitzvahs or anything? Rabbi Yehuda no hasam ba'av nata deliba talim nosa. When it comes to understanding the depths, v'hakam b'chavin v'yada, they can have kavana, they understand, they know, they have das. Someone who's blind has complete knowledge. V'hacham yishum hanahu v'haleisle hana. However, the issue over here is we need to be able to have someone who has hana to be able to be paris al shema. Okay. For Rabbanan isle hana. Rabbanan say that blind people do get hana from sight, even though they're not seeing. Rabbi Yossi, the son Yom Rabbi Yossi, Kol Yoma Hayisim et Star Mikrazeh. It's a very difficult pasuk in the Tochacha. Hayisim Mashish B'Tzarayim Kashir Mashish Ha'iver Ba'Fela. You're going to be walking blindly in the afternoon, just like a real blind person is searching around at night. What difference does it mean that really make between a blind person during the day or night? They can't see either way. I was in the dark. I saw a blind person also in the middle of the night, and he was holding a torch. Why are you holding a torch? You can't see. Normally it's true, I can't see. As long as the torch is in my hand, b'nei adam roin oisi, people will see me. Umatzil nosi, and they'll save me min ha-pechasin, umin ha-kaitzin, umin ha-barkanin. They'll save me from Rashi's pechasim or gumos, holes, thorns, and other obstacles along the way. So therefore, someone who's blind also does have get hana. Kohen sheyesh biyadav mumin loisas kapov. If you have a kohen who has a balmum, he's not to do nesias kapayim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer af mishlo shahayu yadav tzevuais. Also, if you have you have dye on your garments. Now, Rashi says the whole issue lafi sham istakun boy, because people are going to be staring at you. Okay. A satis is lo yisas kapov. He also is not allowed to do Nesias Kapayim, which Rashi doesn't tell us what that is, but hopefully when we get to the Gemara, we'll understand this. Astis Upua, you can see the different girsos on the side. And Neshama Stakan Boy. Okay. Tana Mumin Sha'amru, when we're talking about these Mumin, the fun of Yadav Araglov. It's referring to specifically that there are mumin on their hands, on their feet, on their legs. That's what it's referring to. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Yadav by Hakaniyos or Yisas Kapov. If let's say his hands have spots on them, so then he should not duchen. Tani mihachi Yadav bo Hakiniyos or Yisa es Kapov. Again, if he has these spots, no. Akumos. Akushos Yisas Kapov. If let's say his hands are bent or crooked, then also he should not do duchen. Amravasi Chefani Ube Shani Yisas Kapov. Rashi says, what are these people? Kohen Shehu Ma'anche Chefa or Ma'anche Beishan. These are locations, the Megamgin B'Shainen, that they slur their words. They don't speak so cleanly and clearly. Tanya mihachi ein moridin lifnei ateva lo anshi beishan lo anshi beis chaifa lo anshi tivainin. Why? Neneshikarin lo alfin ayonin alfin. They don't pronounce the letters properly. They mess up their alves and ayons. Armule Rav Chia or Rav Shimon bar Rebbe Amali atalevi pasal atamin aduchen. If it were that if you were a Levi, you'd be puzzled to duchen. Yishum de avi koilach, because you have a very deep voice. And it says in it says in Masechtas Chulin, Rashi quotes, "B'shil ubeis halomim halavim nifsom b'koil." They can actually become puzzle based on their voice. Mishum da'avi koilach. Asa amrule lavoy went to tell his father. Amrule zil emily kishiata magia etzel v'chikisi lahashem l'nimseisi mecharv v'gadev. Wait till you get to this particular place where it says v'chikisi. Now look at Rashi. What exactly is he saying? So Rashi says that Mikrazeh, first of all, it's in Sefer Yeshaya, which we know from Torah Or, but then Rashi further says, "Nimsesa mecharf megadev shahayikari lechetinen heyin." Sometimes they call a ches a hay, and the problem is near kaimer vihikesi. It sounds like he's saying vihikesi, that you're going to actually hit Hashem, and therefore even the change of a hay to a chet can be a very significant difference. Omer Rav Huna Zavagun Uises Kapov. What's a Zavagun? Rashi says, Einav Zolfos Dima. The person's eyes tear up. The Ha-Hahu Dahavi Bishivuse the Rav Huna Vavi Paras Yadi. But I know people who had this problem with their eyes, and they were Paras Yadi, they didn't see Eskapayim. Hahu Dosh Bi'irohavi. These people are literally threshing in the city, namely, because, says Rashi, Kfar Hay Regilin Anchi Iro. People are used to him. V'hoyim Staklin Bo, Ode, they're not going to look at him. Dosh is Lashim Margil. Okay, Kivon de Dosh Dosh, as we hear that a lot. So, therefore, it's not an issue. And perhaps this is a heter when it comes to other things, if this person is Dosh Be'iro. Tanya Mihachi. Zavlagan Luisas Kappa Vim Hayadosh Be'iro Mutter. Again, when it comes to someone who's Dosh Be'iro, so we're more lenient. Amrav Yochanan Suma Ba'achas Me'ena Luisas Kappa. One person who's blind in one eye should not dochen. Va'ahu Dahavi Mishvusid Rav Yochanan Dahavi Paris Yadeh. He did nusis kapayim. Hahu dosh be'iro havi. So again, he was someone that they were used to. Tani mihachi sumba b'achas me'enu v'yisos kavim haya dosh be'iro mutter. Yehuda omer misha haya yadav svuais. If your hands have dye on it, lo yisa es kapab. So tani imrov anshe ir malachna mekach mutter. If this is what the majority of the people do, then it's okay. Now let's look at this important taisvus. Im haya dosh be'iro mutter. B'afil b'mumin shebiyadai. Even if it comes a chayr by a mum, an actual blemish on your hand, Kedir Yerushalmi bahu kayin dahavi yadi akishe asa kamedu Rabbi Naftali amrule kivan shat dash be'ircha mutter. So the chayr, this whole issue of someone who's a bal mum, the whole issue is that a person is going to be mistakel, is going to end up staring at them, which is an issue. So what's the whole issue? So Rashi says, your eyes get weaker. Because the shechina's literally on their hands. So therefore we don't want to do anything which is going to distract them from actually looking. But if it's something which a person's accustomed to seeing anyway, then it's not a problem. Okay. Next Mishnah. Ha'omer eini oiber lifnei ateva b'tzvuyin. If a person says, I'm not going to go in front of the teva with dyed garments, we're not going to allow him also to go in white. So what does that mean? The Gemara is going to explain this. B'sandal eini oiber af yochef yavar. He says, I'm not going to go in sandals, you can't let him go even barefoot. If a person makes his tefillin shel rosh round, it's dangerous. Mitzvah. He hasn't done a mitzvah. Nasnal mitzchay, if you put it on your forehead, al pas yado, or literally on your hand, harzu derech haminus. This is actually the way of minus, which is the way that they used to do mitzvos, by not looking at the actual written Torah, or the oral Torah rather. It says Rashi, Shemavazin, Medrish Chachamim v'hoichan acher hamashma. They only go what's literal. Like it says, Beinei Necha, so they read Beinei Necha as mamish, literally. Al Yodecha is mamish. From Asenu Darshun, Sektas Menachos, says Rashi, B'Gzer Shava, Beinei Necha ze kadkod, Makam Shemoicha Shel Tinig Roifes, which is the top where it's soft by a child. Now Yodecha Gavoa Hayad, Kiboris Haroish, Azura Shehi Sime Keneged Alev, that goes opposite the heart, or near the heart. Fine. Al Pas Yodo Harizu Derech Aminas, Sipon Zahav, if you cover it up with gold, Vanasna al base Unkali Shalo Harizeh Derech Achitzainim. So this is also not proper. This is what's called the Derech Achitzainim. Rashi says, "B'nei Adam ahoichin achri daitam chutz midas chachamim." People that don't follow the chachamim, debi'inan l'chol os v'olcherem os. That it's supposed to be for you a sign, not for everyone else. So therefore, you don't have to put it in a way that everyone could see it. And furthermore, when it says sipon zahav, Rashi says, "Nami ksiv l'man tiator Hashem aficha shehakol mebehema tahara." It has to come from a kosher animal, and therefore it cannot be gold, which is obviously not from a behema tahara. Okay, so now let's go into the Gemara. My time, Achashinon, we're concerned shema minus nizrukabo, that maybe this person is a min, says Rashi. Haminim oibdi avodah zara makpid mikach. They're a makpid when it comes to these different things of dyed clothing or sandalim, right? And therefore, because of that, we don't allow them even the normal way, because once they're saying these things, that could be problematic, or that they do. Okay, fine. So it's dangerous. So lema tenino hadatan rabbanan. Tefillin merubais halach mosh mesinai. They need to be square. V'yamarava betifran uva alkasainan. It's sewings as well as it's diagonal. In other words, it has to be perfectly square. Amar papa masnisin diavidiki amguza. It's like a nut. So it's agul ke'egoy, says Rashi, avagula kebeitza v'kadasha shapradami. According to the Pasha of the Mishnah, if it was round like an egg, it wouldn't be a problem. It's not a proof. So the Bryce and the Mishnah are not necessarily talking about the same things. Okay, let's see. We're going to stop there. Let's see a couple of questions. Okay, question 3. Mahu Zavagun, which we said is the teary eyes. Umalisa Kapov, could he do Nasias Kapayim? So normally not unless he's Dash Me'ira. Question 4 is a hard question. Sipon Zahav Nasnal Base Unkali Shalo Harizeh Derech Achitzainim Mahu Atam De'enu Al Das Chachamim. So he said, first of all, if you cover it with gold, it says Torah Hashem Baficha, and therefore has to come from a kosher animal. He says ayin. Furthermore, Farshim on this. Nasnal base unkoli shalo dechsev l'chol ois l'cherem la'os. Okay, fine. That's that. Let's move on to TA 12. Suma ba'achas me'enav him naisa kapam. So it's really the same answers we saw before by the Zavagun, that if this person just comes for the first time, it's not, but dash mi'iro is allowed. Okay. Question TB 14. Katan umi sheishbo mumin biyadav him noisen es kapem umadua. So a katan a noises kap of shein kavod hatzibur lios kafufin lebirchaso, which is Rashi said. The balmum cannot do it if he's mistaken bo mistakel ein of kehos, and literally your eyes become weakened. Adkan.